Hide me, or they'll find me before sunrise. The man at the glass door did not look like someone who had ever asked for help in his life. He looked like power after the storm had stripped it bare. Rain rolled down his face, his tailored navy suit clung to his shoulders, and one hand pressed against the frame as if the whole world behind him was trying to pull him back into the dark. Maya Johnson stood frozen behind the counter of Harbor Light Diner, a half-counted stack of $1 bills under her palm. The register still open, the clock above the pie case glowing 1:17 a.m. Baltimore was quiet in that strange way cities get quiet after midnight, when the streets are not empty, only watching. The neon sign outside buzzed red and blue through the rain. The coffee machine hissed once, then went still. And beyond the man's shoulder, parked under a broken street lamp, 3 black SUVs waited with their headlights off. Maya did not scream. She did not run. She simply looked at him, at the expensive watch on his wrist, at the polished shoes ruined by puddles, at the fear in eyes that were probably used to making other people afraid. Whoever he was, he did not belong at the back door of a 24-hour diner begging a waitress for shelter. He belonged in a boardroom, on a magazine cover, behind tinted glass, while someone else opened doors for him. But tonight, there was no assistant, no driver, no security team. There was only Maya, a black waitress in slip-resistant shoes, holding the keys to a place nobody important ever noticed. "Please," he said again, softer this time, and that word changed the air. Maya glanced toward the front windows. A shadow moved near the curb. Not fast, not dramatic, just patient. That scared her more. Patient men did not need to shout. Patient men believed the night already belonged to them. Her manager had left 20 minutes earlier. The cook was gone. The last customer, an old trucker with a wool cap and a tired smile, had paid in cash and driven north on Route 40. Maya was alone, and every rule she had ever learned about survival told her not to open that door. Do not invite trouble. Do not get involved. Do not risk your rent, your job, your mother's prescriptions, your little brother's last year of high school, for a stranger with secrets expensive enough to get him followed. But then the man's hand slipped from the frame. His knees softened. His forehead touched the glass with a dull, helpless sound. Maya saw his mouth form one more word, not a command, not a demand, but a surrender. "Please." Something in her chest tightened. Her mother's voice rose from memory, calm and stubborn as Sunday morning. "Baby, you do not ask if a drowning man deserves the rope. You throw it first." Maya moved. She crossed the diner in 6 quick steps, unlocked the back door, and caught him before he hit the wet concrete. He was heavier than she expected, all muscle and money and panic, but fear gave her strength she did not know she had. She pulled him inside, shut the door without letting it slam, and turned the deadbolt with fingers that did not shake until after it clicked. Outside, one of the SUVs rolled forward 3 feet. Maya killed the kitchen light. The diner fell into a blue-black hush, lit only by the neon sign bleeding through the blinds. The man leaned against the wall, breathing hard, trying to speak. "No names," Maya whispered, crouching beside him. "Not yet." He blinked at her as if no one had ever told him no before. A slow knock touched the front door. Once, then again. Not loud, not angry, almost polite. Maya looked over her shoulder at the empty booths, the upside-down chairs, the clean counter, the little hotel stairwell beyond the storage room that had been locked for years. She knew every corner of this building, every loose tile, every dead camera, every door that stuck, and every door that opened if you lifted the handle just right. Whoever those men were, they knew the street. But Maya knew the diner. And in that moment, under the trembling neon of Harbor Light, the richest man in the city had no power left except the courage of the woman he had not yet learned to see. The second knock came softer than the first, and somehow that made it worse. Maya held one finger to her lips, then pointed toward the narrow pantry beside the walk-in cooler. The stranger stared at her, still, trying to understand that his survival now depended on a woman in a coffee-stained apron and black sneakers with worn soles. He opened his mouth, but she shook her head once. "Not here. Not now." She guided him behind the metal shelves stacked with flour bags, canned peaches, paper napkins, and gallon jugs of pancake syrup. His breath was too loud. His shoes scraped the tile. Maya bent close, her voice barely more than air. "If you move, they hear you. If you talk, they find you. So be still." For once, The man obeyed. Maya slipped out of the pantry and pulled the door until only a finger-wide crack remained. Then she moved to the front of the diner. Each step careful, each breath counted. The neon outside painted her face in red streaks. Rain tapped against the windows like 1,000 nervous fingers. At the front door stood 3 men in dark coats, dry under their umbrellas, patient under the dead glow of the street lamp. The tallest one smiled when Maya reached the glass. It was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile people use when they already believe the answer belongs to them. "Evening," he said through the door. "You still serving coffee?" Maya looked at the clock, then at the chairs turned upside down on the tables. "We closed at 1. "That is a shame," he said. "Cold night." His eyes moved past her shoulder, scanning the booths, the counter, the hallway to the restrooms, the swinging kitchen door. He was not looking for coffee. Maya knew men like him, not because she lived in their world, but because men like him sometimes passed through hers. They asked questions that were not questions. They stood too close. They smiled at women working alone and expected fear to do half the work for them. Maya unlocked the door, but kept the chain on. 3 inches of night opened between them. "Gas station is 2 blocks east," she said. "They have coffee until 2. The man glanced at the chain and laughed softly. "You always this careful? A woman closing alone in Baltimore?" Maya said, "Yes." Behind him, one of the others shifted his weight, and Maya saw the shine of expensive leather shoes, the clean cuffs, the quiet confidence of men who did not expect anyone in a diner uniform to study details. The tall man lowered his voice. "A friend of ours may have come through here. Tall, white, dressed like he lost his way from the waterfront." Maya did not blink. "Only person I saw tonight was a truck driver headed north." "You sure?" "I counted his change myself." A long silence pressed against the chain. In the kitchen, the cooler motor hummed. From the pantry, nothing. "Good." The tall man leaned closer, and rainwater rolled from the edge of his umbrella onto the welcome mat. "Maybe we should look around, just to make sure nobody is using your place without permission." Maya let her eyes harden, not enough to challenge him, just enough to become inconvenient. "My manager checks the cameras every morning. Police stop here for coffee after shift. And if I let 3 strange men walk through after closing, I lose my job before breakfast." That was the first lie. The cameras in the dining room had not worked since Thanksgiving. The second lie was better. The police had not stopped in for weeks. But Maya said it with the tired irritation of a working woman who had no time to be intimidated, and sometimes exhaustion sounded more believable than courage. The man watched her for another beat. Then he smiled again, thinner now. "You have yourself a peaceful night." Maya closed the door, locked it, and stood still until the 3 silhouettes moved away from the glass. Only when the sport utility vehicles rolled slowly down the block did she allow herself to breathe. But before relief could reach her knees, a voice behind her whispered from the kitchen, low and shaken. "You do not know what you just stepped into." Maya turned toward the pantry, her face half lit by neon. "No," she said, "but I know who stepped into my diner." The pantry door opened slowly, and the man stepped out like he was entering a courtroom instead of a kitchen. Under the thin blue glow from the emergency light, his face became clear. Sharp jaw, silver at the temples, eyes the color of winter glass. Maya had seen that face before on billboards, newspaper covers, and the polished website that had announced the future of Baltimore with smiling architects and glass towers no one in her neighborhood could afford. Alexander Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Global Hotels. The man who owned luxury suites from Miami to Seattle. The man who shook hands with mayors, gave speeches about urban renewal, and spoke about progress as if progress had never stepped on a poor family while wearing Italian shoes. Maya felt the recognition hit her quietly, not like thunder, like a door closing. Alexander saw it happen in her eyes. His shoulders changed first, then his mouth. He was used to being recognized with admiration, nervousness, maybe even hunger. People saw him and thought opportunity, money, access, power. But Maya looked at him like a memory had just walked in carrying a knife made of paperwork. He tried to stand straighter, but the room would not let him become who he usually was. Not with his suit damp, his breathing uneven, and his life hidden behind a waitress who made less in a week than he probably spent on one dinner meeting. "You know me?" he said. It was not a question. Maya walked to the sink, turned on the faucet for 3 seconds, then shut it off. The sound gave her time to steady her face. Everybody in this city knows you. Alexander swallowed. Then you know why those men might want to find me. Maya turned back to him. No. I know why a lot of people might want to yell at you. That is different. The words landed clean. Not loud. Not cruel. Clean. He looked away first. That surprised her. Men like Alexander Whitmore did not usually look away. They looked through people, over people, past people. 3 years earlier, Maya had stood in a crowded community hearing on Fayette Street, still wearing her diner uniform because she had come straight from a double shift. Her mother, Ruth, had been beside her in a wheelchair, wrapped in a gray coat that smelled faintly of lavender lotion and hospital soap. The room had been full of residents holding folders, rent notices, old photographs, and the kind of hope that already knew it was outnumbered. Alexander had sat at the front table with city officials, legal advisors, and a bottle of imported water. He had spoken about redevelopment, new jobs, a stronger waterfront, a better Baltimore. Maya had raised her hand until her shoulder ached. When they finally called on her, she stood and told him that the building he had purchased was not empty potential. It was home. It was where her mother knew every neighbor by name. It was where old men played dominoes under the awning. It was where children learned to ride bikes in a parking lot cracked by weeds. Alexander had listened with the still face of a man waiting for weather to pass. Then he said, "Sentiment does not pay property tax." 7 words. Calm, polished, efficient. The room had gone quiet, and Maya had sat down feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. 1 month later, Ruth Johnson moved out of the apartment where she had lived for 22 years. 2 months later, Maya picked up extra overnight shifts. 6 months later, the building was wrapped in banners showing rooftop pools, fitness lounges, and studio apartments starting at prices that made former residents laugh because crying took too much energy. Now that same man stood in her kitchen with rainwater on his collar and fear in his eyes. Life had a strange sense of timing. Alexander studied her face. "You were at that hearing," he said. Maya folded her arms. "My mother was in the wheelchair." His expression shifted, not enough to become an apology, but enough to prove the memory had found him. "Maya Johnson," he said quietly, reading the name tag pinned crookedly to her apron as if the letters had finally become a person. She smiled without warmth. "You remembered the property tax, not the people." Outside, far down the block, an engine turned over and faded into the rain. Inside, the diner held its breath. Alexander opened his mouth, but no polished sentence came out. No speech, no defense, just silence. For the first time since he had fallen through her door, Maya saw something more dangerous than the men outside. She saw a powerful man beginning to understand that being saved did not erase what he had broken. Alexander did not ask for forgiveness, and that almost made Maya respect him for half a second. Almost. He stood beneath the buzzing kitchen light with his hands open at his sides, as if he had finally learned that money could not unlock every door. The rain kept tapping the roof. The clock above the stove clicked from 1:23 to 1:24. 1 minute older, 1 minute deeper. Maya grabbed a clean towel from the shelf and tossed it to him. "Press that against your forehead," she said, "and do not drip on my floor." He caught it clumsily, then did what she told him. The sight should have felt satisfying. Alexander Whitmore, the man who once sat above her neighborhood like a judge, now taking orders from a waitress in a closed diner kitchen. But satisfaction did not come. Only the old ache did. Maya turned away before he could see it. Harbor Light had not always been a tired diner under a half-empty hotel. Her grandmother used to talk about the place like it was a lighthouse without water, a refuge for railroad workers, nurses coming off night shift, truckers passing through, mothers with children sleeping against their coats. Upstairs, the hotel rooms had been small but clean. 26 doors, 26 brass numbers, a narrow staircase that smelled like lemon polish and old carpet. Then the city changed. Developers came with renderings. Banks came with promises. Men in suits started calling working neighborhoods underused land, as if people could be erased by changing the label. The hotel closed first. Then the second floor was locked. Then the third floor windows were boarded from the inside. Only the diner survived, not because anyone valued it, but because no one rich had decided what to do with it yet. Maya knew the building the way some people knew family. The storage room door stuck in winter. The back hallway floor dipped near the mop sink. The old service staircase behind the pantry led to the hotel lobby upstairs, but only if you lifted the latch and pushed with your shoulder. Her brother Caleb used to hide there after school when he was 12, doing homework at booth 6 while Maya worked doubles. He would draw buildings on napkins and tell her that one day he would design places people did not get priced out of. Maya would laugh and slide him pancakes she could not afford to pay for. Back then, her mother still walked with a cane, instead of counting pain pills by the week. Back then, Hope still had a kitchen table to sit at. "You should leave," Alexander said quietly. Maya looked over her shoulder. "Excuse me. Those men are not looking for a stolen wallet. They are organized. They are patient. If they find out you helped me, they will come back." "I guess that part." "Then why are you still here?" The question hung between them like a match waiting for flame. Maya stepped closer, not enough to comfort him, not enough to threaten him, just enough to make sure he heard every word. "Because leaving is what people like you do when a place gets hard to look at." Alexander lowered his eyes. There it was again, that flicker of shame trying to become something useful. Before he could answer, a phone vibrated somewhere near the dish station. Maya froze. It was not hers. Hers was in her apron pocket, silent. Alexander reached inside his ruined jacket and pulled out a cracked phone with no caller identification on the screen. He stared at it, his face tightening. Maya saw the reflection of the screen in his eyes. One message. 5 words. "We know about Caleb Johnson." The room changed. Not louder. Colder. Maya took the phone from his hand slowly, read the message once, then again, as if reading it carefully could make it untrue. Her little brother's name sat there in bright white letters, clean and cruel. Alexander whispered, "Maya, I am sorry." But sorry was too small for what had just entered the room. The danger was no longer outside the diner. It had found her family. Maya did not move for 3 full seconds. In a kitchen where she had carried trays, scrubbed counters, counted tips, and swallowed disrespect until it tasted normal, her brother's name on that phone felt louder than every siren in Baltimore. Caleb Johnson was 17, all elbows and ambition, the kind of boy who kept graph paper in his backpack and took pictures of old buildings because he believed even broken places could be redesigned instead of destroyed. He was supposed to be asleep at home with their mother, not written into a message sent by men waiting in black sport utility vehicles. Maya pulled her own phone from her apron pocket and called him. 1 ring. 2. 3. Her heartbeat climbed into her throat. On the 4th ring, Caleb answered, groggy and annoyed. "Maya? It is almost 1:30 in the morning." She closed her eyes for half a breath, grateful enough to almost fall apart. "Where are you?" "Home." "What?" "Put Mom on. She is sleeping." "What is going on?" Maya turned away from Alexander, lowering her voice even though fear had already entered the room and taken a seat. "Lock the apartment door. Then check the hallway through the peephole. Do not open it for anybody. Not a neighbor, not a delivery driver, not even somebody saying my name." Caleb went silent, and in that silence Maya heard him become younger. "Maya, you are scaring me." "Good," she said. "Then listen." Alexander watched her with a face full of guilt he had not earned the right to explain. The cracked phone in his hand vibrated again, but Maya ignored it. Her world had narrowed to Caleb breathing on the other end of the line. "Did you ever do work for a company called Cross Harbor Logistics?" she asked. Caleb exhaled sharply. "It was just deliveries. I told you about that. Quick cash. Nothing serious." Maya looked at Alexander. His face changed at the name. There it was. The missing thread. "Who hired you?" she asked. "A man outside the community center. He said they needed bike couriers who knew the neighborhood. I only did it twice." "What did you deliver?" "Envelopes. A phone once. I never opened anything." "Maya, I swear." She believed him. That was the worst part. Caleb was smart, but he still believed the world gave warnings before it ruined you. "Listen to me carefully," Maya said. "Wake Mom without panicking her. Go into the bathroom, lock that door too, and stay away from the windows. I am calling Officer Denise." "The one who drinks decaf and tips in quarters?" "Yes." "And Caleb?" "Yeah." "Do not be brave tonight. Be obedient." He gave a small, frightened laugh that broke her heart. "Yes, ma'am." The call ended, and the diner felt emptier than before. Maya turned back to Alexander. "Start talking." He did not pretend not to understand. He leaned against the steel prep table, the towel still pressed to his forehead, A billionaire reduced to a man with nowhere left to stand. Cross Harbor Logistics is one of the shell companies tied to Dante Cross, he said. I found out tonight that members of my board were using renovation contracts to move money through abandoned properties. Hotels, storage buildings, old commercial sites, places nobody checks because nobody important lives there anymore. Maya's jaw tightened. Places like this one. Alexander looked toward the locked stairwell that led to the dead hotel above them. Yes. The word was quiet, but it carried a whole city of damage. Maya thought of the boarded windows upstairs, the brass room numbers gathering dust, the tenants pushed out of nearby buildings, the community meetings where people begged men in suits to see them as human beings. So when you stopped signing papers, they came for you, she said. I did not stop soon enough, Alexander answered. That was the first honest thing he had said all night. Not heroic, not polished, honest. Maya wanted to hate him cleanly, the way stories made hatred easy. But real life was messy. A man could break something, then still need saving. A woman could be hurt by him, then still have to decide what kind of person she was in the dark. Another knock sounded at the front door. This time, no politeness lived inside it. Maya slipped her phone under a stack of order pads, pressed call on Officer Denise Carter's contact, and left the line open. Then she looked at Alexander. You wanted to know what you stepped into, she whispered. You stepped into my place. My family. My neighborhood. So now we do this my way. The knock came again, heavier this time, and every light inside Harbor Light seemed to shrink from it. Maya did not hurry. Panic was loud. Panic wasted steps. She moved with the calm of someone who had spent years carrying 6 hot plates through crowded aisles while men twice her size snapped their fingers for more coffee. Pantry, she whispered to Alexander. Behind the flower, then through the old service door. Do not argue. He looked toward the front entrance. If they come inside, you cannot handle them alone. Maya turned on him so. Sharply his mouth closed. I have been handling men who mistake silence for permission since I was 16. Hi. That landed harder than shouting would have. Alexander stepped back into the pantry, found the half-hidden latch behind a leaning stack of cardboard boxes, and slipped into the narrow service passage that led toward the hotel stairs. Maya pulled the pantry door almost closed, then returned to the counter. Her phone was still under the order pads, the call still open. She did not know how much Officer Denise had heard, but she knew enough about Denise Carter to trust one thing. The woman listened before she moved. Maya wiped the counter once, slow and ordinary, then unlocked the front door with the chain still on. Dante Cross stood on the other side this time. She knew it was him before he said a word. Not because he looked wild or dangerous in the way movies taught people to expect. He looked neat. Expensive wool coat, clean hands, polished shoes, a face so controlled it felt rehearsed. The kind of man who could attend a charity breakfast at 9 and destroy a family business by noon without raising his voice. Miss Johnson, he said. Maya kept her hand on the door. We are closed. I know. That is why I am worried about you. His smile never reached his eyes. A young woman alone at this hour. Strange men running through the rain. It is not safe. Then you should go home. Behind him, the other 2 men stood near the curb under dark umbrellas, still as fence posts. Dante tilted his head, amused. You have spirit. Caleb has that too. Maya let the silence sit for one beat, then another. The old Maya might have flinched. The Maya who raised Caleb after their mother got sick might have opened the door out of fear. But fear, when trained by poverty, could become a measuring tool. It told her where the danger was standing. It told her how much time she had. Do not say my brother's name like you know him, she said. Dante sighed softly. But I do know him. Bright kid. Fast on a bike. Good with directions. Eager to help his family. Kids like that are useful. Under the order pads, the open phone waited. Maya leaned closer to the gap in the door, letting her voice sharpen. Useful for what? Delivering envelopes for Cross Harbor Logistics. Dante's eyes changed. It was small, almost nothing, but Maya caught it. The first crack in polished glass. You asked too many questions for a waitress. And you answered too few for a businessman. The rain filled the pause between them. Somewhere far away, a siren cried and faded. Dante looked past her shoulder into the diner, measuring the darkness, the locked kitchen door, the rows of empty booths. Alexander Whitmore made a mistake tonight, he said. He walked away from people who helped make him rich. Maya felt the words move through the phone line like evidence. She kept her face plain. Sounds like a company problem. It becomes a community problem when people forget how deals are made. What deals? Dante smiled again, but now it had teeth without showing any. Old buildings. Empty hotels. City contracts. Renovations no one checks. Money moving where it needs to move. Everyone gets paid, and neighborhoods get cleaned up. Maya thought of her mother packing dishes and newspaper. Caleb doing homework under a flickering kitchen light. Tenants carrying mattresses down stairwells because Progress had mailed them 30 days of warning. Cleaned up, she repeated. Is that what you call pushing people out? Dante's voice cooled. I call it business. Maya looked him dead in the face, the chain between them, the diner behind her, her family on the edge of every word. Funny, she said. That is what men always call it when they want the damage to sound professional. For the first time, Dante stopped smiling. And in the pantry passage, hidden in the dark, Alexander Whitmore heard every word. Maya knew the moment Dante stopped smiling that the door had become a clock. Every second mattered now. The chain was still hooked. Officer Denise was still somewhere on the open line. Alexander was hidden in the service passage behind the pantry, hearing what men like him usually paid other people to keep away from his ears. Maya kept her face steady and reached below the counter as if searching for a receipt book. Her fingers found the small silver remote taped under the drawer, the one her manager used when the smoke alarm acted up during breakfast rush. One press would wake the old building. 2 presses would trigger the hotel's emergency lights upstairs. 3 would send the back alarm squealing into the alley. She pressed twice. Nothing happened at first. Then, above them, behind the locked hotel stairwell, the old emergency lights flickered on with a dull electric buzz. Red lights spilled through the narrow glass window in the stairwell door. Dante's eyes moved toward it. Good. Let him look where she wanted him to look. Somebody upstairs? He asked. Maya gave him the smallest shrug. Old wiring. This place is falling apart, remember? That is why men like you call it empty. In the service passage, Alexander stood frozen on the bottom stair, one hand on the rail, looking up into the red glow of a hotel his company had nearly turned into another clean lie. Dust floated in the air like old testimony. The hallway above smelled of closed rooms, rain leaks, and years of being forgotten. On the wall near the landing, he saw faded brass numbers, 21, 22, 23. Doors that once belonged to travelers, shift workers, families between apartments, people with nowhere prettier to go. For the first time in years, Alexander was not looking at property. He was looking at shelter. Downstairs, Dante leaned closer to the chained opening. Open the door, Miss Johnson. No, one word. Flat. Final. He studied her, then lowered his voice. Your brother made deliveries for my company. That makes him part of this, unless I decide he is not. I can be generous. Maya let the silence stretch just long enough for the phone under the order pads to catch every syllable. You mean you can threaten a 17-year-old and call it generosity? Dante's jaw tightened. Maya pressed the remote a 3rd time. The back alarm screamed through the alley, sharp and sudden, but not dangerous, not violent, only loud enough to split the night open. The 2 men at the curb turned toward the rear of the building. Dante looked over his shoulder. Maya used that half-second to slide the chain free, not to let him in, but to step out. She stood under. The narrow awning with rain misting her face, the door behind her still within reach. You want Alexander? She said. Then say why. Dante's eyes narrowed. You are making a mistake. No, Maya said. For once, somebody in this neighborhood is making a record. The word record changed everything. Dante looked at the counter inside, at the order pads, at the dim red light blinking from Maya's phone screen. His face went still, not scared yet, calculating. That was when Alexander stepped out of the stairwell behind her, pale, shaken, but upright. Maya heard him before she saw him, and for one wild second she wanted to tell him to stay hidden. But he walked forward anyway, no speech prepared, no boardroom mask left. Dante, he said, voice rough but clear. It is over. Dante laughed once, short and empty. You think she can save you? Alexander looked at Maya, then at the diner, then at the rain-soaked street where his empire suddenly felt very far away. No, he said. I think she already did. In the distance, sirens began to rise, not like chaos, but like an answer finally arriving late. The sirens grew louder, and for the first time that night, Dante Cross looked toward the end of the block instead of into the diner. That tiny turn of his head told Maya everything. Men like Dante did not fear noise. They feared witnesses. Blue and red lights washed across the wet pavement, flashing over the black sport utility vehicles, the empty booths, the chrome edges of the counter, and Alexander Whitmore standing under the awning like a man seeing his own city from the wrong side of the glass. Dante stepped back, slow enough to pretend it was a choice. "You have no idea what you have done," he said. Maya kept one hand near the door and the other wrapped around the small remote in her apron pocket. "I know exactly what I have done. I kept a man alive. I protected my brother, and I let you explain yourself on an open phone line." Inside, under the order pads, Officer Denise Carter's voice finally came through, low and steady. "Maya, step away from the door." Maya did. Not fast, not frightened, just obedient to the first voice all night that had earned trust. To patrol. Cars turned onto the block, tires hissing through rainwater, followed by an unmarked sedan. Denise stepped out first, gray rain jacket over her uniform, hair tucked under a cap, face calm in the storm. She did not rush in like a hero trying to own the scene. She read it. Maya by the entrance. Alexander injured but standing. Dante near the curb. Two men pretending not to know whether to leave or stay. The open phone on the counter. The alarm still crying into the alley. "Everyone keep your hands where I can see them," Denise called. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Authority sounded different when it came from someone who used it to protect instead of perform. Dante lifted his hands with a thin smile, already preparing a lawyer-shaped version of the night. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. Miss Johnson is upset. Mr. Whitmore is confused. There has been no crime here." Maya almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she had heard that tone before. The smooth voice that tried to turn harm into confusion, pressure into misunderstanding, fear into drama. Alexander heard it too. Maybe he had used that tone in conference rooms. Maybe that was why shame crossed his face like a shadow. He stepped forward. "No," he said. "It is not a misunderstanding." Dante's smile tightened. Alexander looked at Denise, then at Maya, then back at the flashing street. "My company records will confirm shell contracts tied to cross-harbor logistics, renovation payments, property transfers, board approvals. I have copies in a secure drive, and I will testify." The word testify changed the street more than the sirens had. Dante's face went empty. Maya watched Alexander say it, and for the first time, he sounded less like a billionaire defending himself and more like a man choosing a side after years of standing in the safest middle. Denise nodded once to the other officers, then walked to Maya. "Your brother is safe," she said quietly. "I sent a unit to the apartment. Your mother is with him." Maya's strength almost left her body. She caught the doorframe, not dramatically, not for attention, just because relief had weight. Alexander saw it and reached out, then stopped himself before touching her. Good. He was learning. The officers moved with calm precision. Questions were asked. Names were taken. Phones were collected. No one shouted. No one needed to. The night had already given its statement. As Dante was led toward the patrol car, he looked once at Maya, expecting maybe fear, maybe regret. She gave him neither. She stood beneath the broken neon sign, rain shining on her cheeks, apron damp, name tag crooked, eyes clear. Behind her, Harbor Light Diner glowed in the storm like a small, stubborn star. Alexander turned to her, voice low. "You saved my life." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said. "I saved mine too." By sunrise, the rain had stopped, but Harbor Light Diner still smelled like the storm. Coffee, wet pavement, old grease, and something harder to name, the scent of a night that had changed shape before anyone was ready. Maya sat in booth 6 with a paper cup untouched between her hands, watching Officer Denise Carter speak with Alexander Whitmore near the counter. His expensive coat was gone. His white shirt was wrinkled. The towel on his forehead had been replaced with a clean bandage from the first aid kit, and somehow that made him look more human than all the magazine covers ever had. Caleb arrived just after 4 in the morning with their mother, Ruth, and the moment Maya saw her brother's face through the glass, the strength she had been holding like a tray finally slipped. He rushed inside and wrapped his arms around her, all 6 feet of him shaking like the little boy who used to hide behind her at doctor appointments. Ruth moved slower, leaning on her cane, but her eyes were sharp. She looked at Maya, then Alexander, then the tired diner, and understood more than anyone had explained. "You threw the rope?" she whispered. Maya nodded once. She did not cry. Not yet. Some tears need privacy. The following week moved like a city waking from a fever. News trucks parked outside Harbor Light. Neighbors stood under umbrellas and pointed at the old hotel windows. Reporters said words like corruption, shell companies, emergency testimony, and community impact. Alexander did not hide behind lawyers. He handed over records. He named board members. He resigned from 2 committees that had once celebrated him. For the first time, his voice was being used to expose the machine that had made him rich. But Maya did not watch much of it. She went back to work. Eggs still needed scrambling. Coffee still needed pouring. Rent still came due. Survival did not pause just because the world suddenly found your story useful. 7 days after that night, Alexander walked into Harbor Light at noon, not through the back door, not chased, not bleeding, not powerful in the old way. He came alone, holding a plain manila envelope. The diner went quiet. Forks slowed. Conversations thinned. Maya stood behind the counter, wiping a clean spot that was already clean. "Maya," he said, "I came to return something." She looked at the envelope but did not take it. "If it is money, keep it." "It is not money." His voice caught slightly. "Not like that." He placed the envelope on the counter and slid it toward her. Inside was the deed to the Harbor Light building, the diner, the locked hotel above it, the old storage lot behind it, and every unpaid tax lien cleared. Maya read the first page, then the second. Her hands stayed steady, but the room blurred at the edges. Alexander said, "I bought it from the holding company this morning. Then I transferred it into a community trust. You control the board. Your mother has a seat. Caleb has one when he turns 18. I have none." Maya looked up. Why? He did not reach for a speech. He did not decorate the truth. "Because I spent years calling places like this underused. Last week, this place saved my life. But before that, it held yours. I should have seen that sooner." The diner held its breath. Maya thought of the upstairs rooms, closed and dusty. She thought of women waiting after late shifts because buses stopped running. Families between leases. Workers sleeping in cars. Mothers choosing between medicine and rent. Then she folded the papers back into the envelope and said, "It will not be a luxury hotel." Alexander almost smiled, but wisely did not. "I know. It will be temporary housing. Safe rooms. Job training. A kitchen that feeds people who cannot pay. Caleb can help design the renovation." Ruth let out a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a prayer. Alexander lowered his head. "Then it will finally be worth what I paid for it." Months later, the sign outside changed. Harbor Light House. The neon was repaired, warm gold instead of broken red. The upstairs windows glowed again. Not with chandeliers. Not with rooftop lounges. With lamps. Curtains. Life. Alexander came by sometimes. Never with cameras, never with speeches, only with rolled-up sleeves and boxes of supplies he carried himself. Maya never called him a hero. He was not one. He was a man who had been saved, then chose to stop running from what saving required. And Maya, the waitress the world had almost overlooked, became the keeper of a door that opened for people who had been told too many times there was no room. He came back to buy her a hotel. She turned it into a home.